Hi, everybody. Happy Thursday. Welcome to.
Show me audience views, the compliance live.
Are you broadcasting?
Yeah, I have to start broadcast.
You should be good.
Okay, I think you're good.
Good? Technical difficulties. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Compliance Live. Happy Thursday. I'm Amanda Hosenfeld.
I'm Kaylin Gomka.
And I gotta say, it still sounds so weird when you say it.
I know.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
So we have a wonderful show for you today. Before we get started, I do want to take a moment and say a very huge thank you to Kaylin, as well as David and Darielle from the last show that we did, the Compliance in the News. You guys did an amazing job.
Thank
You took care of it while I was on, you held it down while I was on vacation. I actually listened to it or watched it on my way back from vacation, and you just knocked it out of the park. So great job. And we, of course, welcome David and Darielle back on the show whenever they want to.
Sure, yeah.
You guys made
It's great having them.
Smash up team. So if you want to view that show, you can go out to our Go to Stage at gotostage.com/channel/compliance live. Also on our social media, we've posted, if you don't want to watch the whole hour, we've snipped it up for you and post those over the week following the show, so you can access those on our Facebook, our Instagram.
I think maybe there's a small clip on Instagram.
I think the LinkedIn definitely, sure. Twitter definitely. Yeah. So check out our social media.
Yeah, and I think those are much shorter snippets, so like 5-ish minutes, right?
Yeah, the compact. It's like Compliance Live Light.
I love it. Okay.
So today, do you know, Kaylin? Okay, so shockingly, October is something other than spooky season. So what do you think it is?
Pumpkin spice latte season.
Girl, they started those in September.
No, I don't know. What is it?
It is put your newborn baby in a pumpkin and take a family picture month.
Sure.
Obviously.
Or like puppy. Like, can we put a puppy in there?
I mean, if you can get the puppy in there.
Still.
So actually, October is Global Diversity Awareness Month.
How appropriate.
Yeah, so we wanted to nod to that in October, even though it is the last day of the month. And we also want to start a series of diversity shows. So this show is going to serve as the introduction to a series of shows that we're going to cover all sorts of diversity topics, from unique individual subcultures in the workplace. We're going to take the opportunity to highlight some of those subcultures over the next few shows.
Great.
Yeah, so we're really excited about the series. Hopefully our audience will pop back in to see what we have in store for them.
This is just episode 1.
Yeah. This is it. This is the intro. So that's why there's no guests. It's just family here. Right. Just you and me. Let's talk about diversity. So I have a brain exercise for you, Kaylin.
I'm ready.
All right. So we know that language evolves. We know people evolve in their thinking.
Sure.
Everything changes. So let's talk about that in context of diversity.
Okay.
So we're gonna go back 20 years. What do you think diversity meant 20 years ago?
20 years. So like the 90s.
God, stop. Can you say it again, just slowly?
In the 90s?
That's so crazy to me.
I would say, I don't think that workplaces were as accessible for those with disabilities. Outside of just accessibility, I think opportunity-wise, those with disabilities weren't given the same opportunities as able people.
Okay. So let's knock that as a marker down 20 years ago. Okay. Now let's go back 50 years ago.
Ooh, 50.
Do some quick math. Yeah, hold on.
I'm so bad at head math. I don't think that women were really, like, there was some gender issues in the workplace, Like women didn't really have the same opportunities as men did.
Right.
While they were in the workplace, they were allowed in the workplace. You often just saw them as like secretaries or in an admin role versus leadership roles or something of more like strategic development and
Right,
stuff like that.
management,
Yeah.
executive. So it's harkening back to that like 70s, 60s, 50s, that kind of Mad Men,
Yes.
boys club
Mhm.
culture. All right, so individuals with disabilities 20 years ago,
Yeah.
women in the workplace 50 years ago. Let's go back 100 years. What was diversity
Woo.
100 years ago?
So like early 1900s.
Yeah.
I think that we still had a lot of ethnic segregation in at least America at the time. So I don't think that those of different ethnicities were really given the same opportunities in a workplace as Caucasian people were. I think that, outside of, excuse me, just general segregation, those of, those who are minorities were offered maybe even positions in a office space.
For opportunities at all.
Right. Outside of just like with the women, it was just like you couldn't be in leadership or any maybe progressive role, but
Right. So we did this kind of backwards to illustrate the fact that today we wouldn't see individuals with disabilities, and we wouldn't see women, and we wouldn't see ethnic minorities as kind of a problem to be fixed to
Right.
bring them into the workplace. And that has evolved to what diversity is today. When we talk diversity today, we're not only talking race, gender, and people with disabilities, but we've got to bring in other underrepresented groups, such as age, people of differing ages. We're going to have a whole show upcoming on the generational spaces in the workplace. But people, now is a time in our country where we've got 4 different generations all working in the workplace together.
Roof. That's right.
And their priorities are different. So that show is going to be really awesome. I can't wait to bring that to you. But also, not only gender, but gender identity. Individuals that identify as more or less than male or female. Religious or cultural diversity. And I find this one fascinating, people of different socioeconomical backgrounds are now part of that.
That is so interesting.
Yeah, so people that are of the lower classes, lower middle classes, are now being afforded the same opportunities as genuinely is not the word that I meant, generally people of upper middle or upper class have been in the past.
And I think that's so interesting to bring up, because we don't often think of that as social class being part of a diversity issue, more of just like a social problem. But that's really cool.
Yeah, it's so interesting how diversity has evolved from, do you have this certain race in your workplace?
What do you look like?
Right, to how do you identify what makes you a whole person and not just part of a person. And so that's how diversity has evolved. And that's really what we want to tackle over these next few episodes of Compliance Live. Just a couple of statistics for you. So diversity and inclusion in the workplace. It's important to Compliance Line.
Very.
And we'll talk more about that later, but Glassdoor did a study on this.
Okay.
And found that, I'm gonna look at my paper and make sure I get my numbers right, because I'm not a numbers person. 87% of global companies count diversity and inclusion as a high priority item.
Okay, that's a pretty good number.
That's awesome. 87%, better than nothing, right?
That's right.
We're not at 100 yet. However, 87% value diversity and inclusion. But only 37% in that same survey task their leaders with specific diversity and inclusion goals.
So what does that mean?
So good question. It means that only 30% of those companies that say, yeah, diversity inclusion is really important to us as a company, only 37% say, all right, leadership, let's do something about it.
Got it.
So
actionable.
Right, exactly. And here's another number I'll throw out at you. 42% in that same study admit that diversity is still a barrier to employee progression in the company. So we've got three numbers, and they're all saying really distinctly different things.
Yes.
87% say things are really, really important to me. 37% say, but leadership, only 37% say leadership is taking an active role in fixing this. And then 42% say, yeah, well, we make it a priority. We want it to be a priority, but there's still barriers to those underrepresented minority subgroups advancing.
42% is such a big number for that admission. Yeah. I think in today's day and age where diversity is, we're speaking about it on a podcast. People talk about it in day-to-day lives, and it's a really big thing in corporate America across the world too. 42% is a big number.
Yeah, it's a huge gap.
Impactful to employees and their opportunities to work.
So that, to me, that 42% number shows a long way to go for people in the workplace. Nice. And I just want to kind of crush a bug of this right now, but if you're listening to this, thank you. Yeah. But otherwise, it's really a hard conversation for two Caucasian women to sit in a room and talk about it.
That's right, yeah.
And we want to be upfront about the fact that we have done a lot of research. We have practiced this conversation several times just because we want to make sure that we, as two Caucasian women of a certain generation, understand the implications for all of the other diverse population of people that will be listening or watching this.
Yeah, we want to do this topic justice because it is such a big, important topic, not just in the workplace, but just in the world as a whole.
Absolutely. So let's talk about, in the workforce, how we get a diverse population.
Yeah, what is a company that does it right? What do they look like?
So they look like compliance lines.
Right. It's us.
It's us. We're the company. We genuinely take diversity very seriously. We emphasize it. We're going to outline a few ways that we do that. Not that what we do is right above all others.
Ideas.
Right, exactly. But we are always interested in hearing other ideas too. So if you want to tap into your comment section or your question section, and we'll get some good insights from that. And also take anything that you hear here today, take it back to your company, because we really value it, diversity and inclusion. And we think that we do a pretty good job of making sure our workforce is diverse and inclusive. Yeah. So when we talk about diversity in the workplace, we essentially have two topics that we're going to move forward. One is diversity management. How do I get people in the door of diverse populations?
Right.
And then the second topic we're going to tackle is promoting diversity and inclusion. So once your employees are in the door and they are happy, adjusted, productive members of your workforce, how do I make them feel included in the population as a minority or underrepresented population? So this is where this is kind of an interesting conversation, because you and I both do a little bit of HR. I do the HR processing, you do the HR recruiting. So when we talk about hiring a diverse population, what are some of the things that we do to make sure that our workforce is diverse?
I like that question. I think the first thing we do, and we do this without really thinking about it too, so it's not necessarily conscious that we do it, but we don't look at people's names. We don't look at where they went to school. We don't look at where they're from even, to try and identify like what type of person this is. We're looking at their work history. We're looking at their education, generally speaking. We're looking at how well they'll fit into the role that we have posted. So we don't discriminate based on any assumptions that could be made by some of that personal information on a resume.
Just from what you can see on a resume.
What is your, if we can just tell, like, what is your experience like? Will you do a good job, a suitable job in this role here? That's what we want to know.
Right. So when we take a look at resumes, we don't put people kind of in buckets based on their perceived
Correct.
subgroup or subculture.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really important to look at in terms of building a diverse workforce.
Mm-hmm.
I want to take to pause for a moment and
Okay.
take a stab at this topic, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it came up in our research, and I wanted to know what your thoughts on it were. So a lot of people confuse diversity and inclusion with affirmative action.
Yeah.
So affirmative action has kind of a negative
Mm-hmm.
connotation to it. People always kind of say it with a, well, affirmative action.
Yeah, like they're being forced to adhere to it.
Exactly. So what is affirmative action?
So affirmative action is just, the laws that our country has made around inclusion. So ADA, the civil rights, laws, things like that, that say these laws are in place to protect these underrepresented people. And people do think of it as not a bad thing, but something that they're kind of forced into. We have to do this or we'll get in trouble.
Right. And how is that different from diversity and inclusion?
Diversity and inclusion is, I want to represent these people. I want these people to work under our roof, work in our office, because we know as a company that promotes diversity that people from all walks of life should work under one roof to enhance the workplace.
Right. Everybody brings a rich culture to the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really important to understand that affirmative action is not just, should I hire an African American over somebody that's not African American? That's often that connotation that gets put in it. But affirmative action is, just like you said, it's a series of laws to prevent discrimination based on protected classes. Mm-hmm. So prevent discrimination based on race, sex, ethnicity, culture, religion,
Mm-hmm.
all of those things. Now, I think it also is a really good time to pause and say that the federal government has guidelines for what are not protected status individuals, and some states even have different guidelines. So some states say, yes, all of those, but the federal government plus LGBTQ plus minorities, things like that. So they are or people that identify with a different gender.
Okay.
So those are all subject to state laws. But the states that have those protections in place are often seen as more diverse and more inclusive.
I could see why.
Yeah, but the affirmative action part is the ADA, the Adults with Disabilities Act.
Yes.
The Civil Rights Act laws. Those are to increase your willingness to hire underrepresented minorities. It's not to force you to do it. You should want to do that, and that's what diversity and inclusion is.
It's the desire to have every type of person work with you.
Right. So let's talk about hiring practices in general. When we hire individuals, or when our clients hire people, or when any company looks to hire people, do they just go to Indeed? Or can they just go to Indeed or LinkedIn?
Sure, go to Indeed, go to LinkedIn. Is Monster still a thing? I think maybe.
Is that a thing?
I don't know. It used to be a thing.
Used to have commercials.
But sure, you can. But there are other places that you can advertise your jobs or, actively seek new employees. One thing that we do just to, we think it's really important to have people from the local population work for us. So we go to some of our local job fairs where we get to meet these candidates in person, and it's a really fun event to see and interact with people, all sorts of people, all different people. But I think it's also important to use platforms that encourage employment of veterans and employment of people with disabilities.
Yeah, there are organizations that full goals are to get you to hire these subgroups of people. So it's not, and you said, we were talking about this earlier, and you said Indeed will actually highlight a veteran's
do.
resume.
Yeah, so we used Indeed in a couple different ways, but when you use recruiting on Indeed, you can actually contact someone who's a veteran for free. And then I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe Indeed allows veterans some, more cost efficient promotion of their resumes and stuff on to kind of boost them up to the top of the stack. But Indeed does a good job helping
of highlighting veterans.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. I also think it's really important as we talk about diversity and inclusion to kind of circle back around to socioeconomic status.
Yeah.
So that's one that's not, of course, federally protected. And I don't even know that it's got some state laws behind it. But as we build a diverse workplace, compliance line or anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
having individuals that come into the workforce that may not have a college degree.
Yeah, this is a great topic.
Yeah. Why would we look at work experience over a college degree?
So I think that education, we require a minimum education, I think, but it's not necessarily college. We find that not everyone is afforded the same opportunity to participate in a higher education program, go to college, even a community college, whether that be maybe there's some transportation issues, or
Right.
maybe they have family responsibilities, they have a family to take care of, and either can't afford or don't have the time to go to college. So we don't think it's fair to say that someone without a degree isn't just as intelligent as someone with one.
Right. I think it's, when I was in high school, my teacher said, like, legitimately 20 years ago, my counselor said, you can't get a great job without a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
So you got to go to college.
Yeah, there was always that connotation that you're going to make less money if you don't have a degree.
Exactly. So you go to college and you graduate college, you get a bachelor's degree, and they say, okay, wonderful, but you can't get a good job until you get a master's degree.
Yeah.
So you go back and get a master's degree.
But wait,
and you graduate with your master's degree, and they say, okay, good, that's awesome, but you can't get a good job without a doctorate degree. And at this point, my husband said, no.
You were not spending
absolutely not. There will be no more student loans in this house. But I think that highlights the fact that we will automatically kind of overvalue people with a higher education that may not have the work ethic or the job skill set just because they have that higher level of education.
And I think work experience speaks for whether or not a person is capable of doing the job. If you've had 10 years of work experience doing a very similar role as to what I'm hiring for, chances are you're going to use that experience a little bit more than your degree.
Yeah.
To apply to the role. Anyway.
Right. And it's not to knock people with higher level degrees. We go school, but we find just as much value at Compliance Line in somebody with an associate's degree or a high school diploma that's worked in a call center for 10 years and their metrics are amazing.
That's right.
And they seek us out and they come work for us. That person is valued as much as somebody that's pulling in a bachelor's degree that maybe just graduated college and is walking in and can type 70 words a minute but can't do an adaptive interview with us.
And another thing that we do, this is an option for those who are trying to get great candidates but still inclusive, we do job assessments. So to test someone's knowledge, relevant knowledge to the job, we do job assessments for recruiting. We send, because writing is really important here, we make them do a writing sample, listen to a video, and then transcribe that video into a narrative to see how well they'll do if we choose to hire them.
Right. And a lot of times someone with a higher level of education gives us way more information than we need. Whereas the person that maybe didn't go to college but graduated high school gives us the amount of information that's relevant to make an actionable
and
report.
Writes very well. Yes. Right. I mean, we see both, but it just goes to show that while education is important, it's not our only deciding factor when we're hiring folks.
So the same kind of consideration is given to a workforce that is over a certain age. So workforce is over
Correct.
50.
Yes.
So there's statistics that show that that population of people is less likely to be hired because of their age,
Yeah.
and whether that's due to the thought that maybe they're going to have health issues in the
Or
future,
near retirement. We want more time out of you.
Right, exactly. So we don't shy away from hiring individuals,
Absolutely not.
even as new hire employees, not just
Yeah.
the individuals that have been here for
Straight into entry
15
level.
years. Right, entry level employees that
Yeah.
maybe career changers or retirees
Yeah.
that just want to do something, new. Additionally, some underrepresented populations that could be great sources of talent for you and bring a diverse workforce is reformed offenders. So individuals that
Great
maybe
point.
made some mistakes when they were 19 years old, but now they're 35 and they are not able to, get the kind of job that they would love
Yep.
because of that past. People, of course, with disabilities. So there are, due to the ADA, companies make accommodations for individuals that need them. So some common ADA accommodations are typing transcript
Nifty. The
software.
Voice, the voice transcript.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just because you might have an individual that only has one arm,
Right.
but they can speak into a microphone and that transcribes their words just as fast as two typing hands.
I think like the takeaway from this is it doesn't matter how someone looks, how old they are, where they come from, what they believe in. None of that stuff is going to tell you how well they will work for you.
Absolutely. So once we hire in and we've got this great diverse workforce sitting at your desks or in your cubicles or however you have
Wherever
them,
they sit.
how do you keep them? How do you keep a
How do you
diverse
keep
workforce?
them?
How do you promote diversity in your organization and keep them happy?
Question. I can tell you how we keep them.
Okay,
So
let's
talk about that. So first, like we have a very strong set of values, and people is within our top values. So we care about everyone who works here, and we don't just expect our employees to, hang up their hat at the door, their steampunk hat.
Don't hang up my steampunk hat.
Don't hang up that steampunk hat at the door. Like wear it into work. And
I did.
Yeah.
By the way.
Good.
Yeah.
But be your whole self at work. We want people to be their whole selves at work, not just their work selves. We encourage them to let their personality show and to just be themselves.
That's one of our company values, right?
Yeah, people is one of the values. And then, so we were talking earlier, it's one of like our favorite parts of meetings is we start all of our meetings with an information share, an info share.
Yeah, even the tough meetings, like even the
like I had crunching margin numbers.
Yeah, this is a profit meeting.
Yeah.
This is a budget meeting you don't want to walk into. This is I'm gonna get chewed for something meeting.
Or like a presentation I've been preparing for like a month.
Right, very important, like business-driven meetings, not just like a spirit teaming. Not that we're marginalizing spirit
KPI
team, but
meetings, though.
right, like key performance indicators. Right, if you full on like company values meetings, they always start with an info share.
So like what's special about info share though is we're not allowed to talk about work during our info share. Like, and this is something our CEOs created or at least enacted within our organization. They want us to tell them about our lives. Like, who are you outside of work? Tell me what's happening with you outside of work. It doesn't have to be like super personal, but I often talk about my puppy or, my family.
My daughter or the spider that's taken up residence in the.
We have heard
that spider. Yeah, that spider he's gone. We missed him, but he had a grasshopper this huge the other day. It was large.
Writing spider, right?
Right. Old golden orb weaver. Well, we accept all sorts of spiders outside of my house. But yeah, an info share, even our CEOs, Nick and Gio, who we hope are going to join us on one of our shows. That's going to be a treat. Can't wait for that.
Both of them at the same time.
Oh, that's going to be a treat. They will share things about their families, about their personal lives, not intensely personal, like uncomfortably personal questions, but just
what are you doing this weekend?
And I feel like it's a way that our company employees can identify with each other.
I totally agree. Like, I know that I don't want to come to your front door because there's a spider there. Like, I'm going to come around
Right.
to the back.
And I know that your puppy has not been fully trained, but
That's
is
true.
looking forward to graduation.
That's true.
So these are things that we learn about our diverse population of employees. And I think that also lends itself to learning something about the different cultures or the different lifestyles
Yeah.
or the different hardships that people outside of like our own sphere, because you can go all your life living in a neighborhood that looks exactly like you,
Yep.
in a town that looks exactly like you, in a city that 50% of the population is just like you, or 80% of the population is just like you. And that's why hiring local is also really important, right? But if we take a step outside of it and we have these conversations like during InfoShare, where we discuss things outside of what we know,
Right.
it helps us grow as people, and then it helps the company be more profitable, more accepting, more diverse, of course, more diverse, but more willing to listen.
And I think when you have that relatability with your peers, or your bosses or whoever, it's easier to come to work. It's a little happier. You know, it's happier to know you work with other human beings and not just like machines.
Right. And I know we're beating the compliance line drum pretty hard right now. We're going to post in our social media, we'll post some statistics that of the makeup of our company. So it's not just us.
Oh, yeah. That's a good idea.
Yeah, the slides for that we proudly display that this is a minority owned company with X% of women, X% of minorities working for it. Those are important statistics. So let's talk outside of like that, the personal cultural part of it. We're gonna stop and we're gonna talk about training, because you know it's my favorite thing. So I think that a key point in keeping a diverse population and promoting diversity within your establishment, your organization, is education and training. So I'll give you a little anecdote. Recently, some laws in Florida were enacted where medical, I don't know the exact law, so Janelle, who's our compliance person, please go easy on me. But they have enacted kind of a rule or a law that health institutions should have cultural competency training. Yeah, so they came to us and they're like, compliance line, Amanda at compliance line, do you guys do cultural competency training? And we're like, we don't, but what a great idea. Can you send me what your state requirements are?
Right.
Let's take a look at them and see what we can do. Because as one of their vendors, we want to make sure that we are in line with their laws as well. And also, before we talk about what's in the training, we're ahead of the curve. We pride ourselves on being kind of a step ahead. We kind of fully expect that these cultural competency trainings will be a part of regular, like, federal training, almost like harassment, HIPAA.
They're going to run into that compliance group.
Exactly. Like IT security. Oh, so in January, you're going to be like, okay, I've got to take my HIPAA, my IT security, my harassment, my cultural competency training. So we're looking towards the future on that. And so the training that we put together is around how to communicate with individuals outside of a culture that you're familiar with.
Yeah, people who aren't like you.
Yeah, so that's important for our call center employees, especially. And just to take you down kind of a story on that, the cultural competency training talks about different cultures and why they may be hesitant to give information to you for whatever reason. So when we have callers that are calling to report a sexual assault, or sexual harassment, and they're members of the LGBTQ plus community, why they would have a harder time expressing the details of that. Or if we get a call from a nurse reporting a patient incident because they didn't have, or they had a patient that wouldn't take off her hijab. Like, that's important that our employees know why those cultures or groups of people might have those reactions, might be unwilling to provide details. So these cultural competency trainings, they really outline why diverse populations might act or speak differently,
Mhm.
and how to continue to best serve them, even though they're outside of what your knowledge might be.
So I think like this talks about empathy a little bit, right?
Yeah,
So it's
absolutely.
like, how can you be empathetic, be best empathetic towards people who you may not have a lot of similarities with, or you may not have a lot of understanding for, the differences between the two of you. It brings awareness to how to deal with the differences, and then how to better show empathy. I think this is not only important for our call center employees. If maybe your organization doesn't have a population that deals with the public like ours, but it's important to know, how can our employees be empathetic towards our employees despite their differences.
Yeah, absolutely. And that starts day one at Compliance Line with our culture. Our CEOs spend almost a whole day with any new hire. Hopefully, we have groups of them, but they spend the whole day talking about these parts of our culture. And then, like we were talking about, the info share, that also ties into having empathy and understanding that your workforce, your coworkers are going through different things. It makes you more empathetic to them, which bleeds into what would make you more empathetic in your job as a whole.
And like, aside from the diversity and inclusion piece of things, which I think ultimately is what we're promoting, it helps foster a healthy work environment.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the last part of kind of the straight-laced part of it, and then we'll talk about some fun stuff. Policies. So how can a company, or how does Compliance Line as a company, enact policies related to diversity and inclusion?
So I think that we talk about, I mean, you know the policy book like the back of your hand, right?
I do. I was just being polite.
You were just trying to offer me some
Yeah.
But you snuggle up with it.
I do. I sometimes at night when I can't sleep, I'll pull it out and I'll flip through it just to familiarize myself with those policies. No, we're joking, but yeah, you have to know our policies, right? And our policies, they start with like hiring policies. Like of course, all of good policies will have your discrimination, your anti-harassment policies. But we also have hiring policies about making educated, informed, and what's the word that I'm looking for? Read my mind, Kaylin. What's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know. I'm so sorry.
Even
like fair?
Fair. Okay. That's the word I'm looking for. Y'all, Halloween has done something.
We've had a lot of candy.
Yeah, we've had a lot of candy, some pizza. Yeah. There were some bagels involved. But outside of those formal kind of federal policies, we also have policies that take individuals' cultures into account. So not only do we have some federal holidays off, but we also allow time for cultural or religious holidays that may be outside of the mainstream. We allow for flexible working hours.
So like, what's that?
So we give specific time off to individuals for taking time to spend with their children at school. So we give them school time off, good for parent-teacher conferences.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
But that works with diversity, because in a diverse population, you might have a parent-teacher conference at 3 in the afternoon, but your shift doesn't end until 5.
Right.
And you took an Uber here to work. So we're going to be flexible with you and let you get off at 3 to go to the parent-teacher conference, and it's not going to be a big deal, because your life, like you said earlier, you don't stop being a whole person when you walk through our door.
Like, we care about all the different types of people that you as an individual are, the parents, the sibling, not just the employee.
Right. It's important to us that your family is also a big part of your life here. Like, we should take a picture, but our entire break room wall
Yeah.
at Compliance Line is full of our family pictures of all of our employees, because that's important to us.
And like we constantly post these pictures of our family events,
Yes.
like our personal family events on one of our sharing sites.
Y'all got an obnoxious amount of Disney pictures
They were
from me
wonderful,
last
though. You
week.
had so many good pictures.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
But those things are important. Your culture is important. Where you come from is important. Those don't stop at the door.
That's right.
That's why Compliance Line also, it's at risk for, advertising that Compliance Line is an awesome company. This is not a job advertisement, but we are throwing out ideas that could potentially help you make your workforce more diverse, right? So we offer PTO, obviously, and somebody stopped me and they're like, but Amanda, everybody offers PTO.
Right.
No, they don't.
Not even for full-timers.
Exactly. There's not a federal regulation requiring.
It's a company decision.
Yeah. And it would vary per company, but our company is very generous with our PTO policy. We also allow for new mothers.
Yes.
This is a great policy. They get 8 weeks paid, full paid maternity leave.
They do not have to use their PTO.
Nope, it doesn't come out of your PTO bank. 8 weeks of maternity leave, and then new fathers also get paternity leave.
Yeah, paid as well.
Exactly, full. You're full. Not like some people are like, oh, you'll get 73% of your salary.
This is full paid for 8 weeks for mothers. I think it's really special that our organization allows for that, and it's just to support all different types of people.
So to tie it back into diversity, not that, let's not keep talking about what an awesome company we are, but this allows like socioeconomical situations. So not every new mother can afford to be out of work and out of pay for 8 weeks, still I can't afford to be out of work, out of pay for 1 week, even when we went to Disney. But at the bottom of all things, like, we want our individuals in our workplace to be supported, to have and to have what they need financially. So we're not going to nickel and dime them on things like maternity leave, because that's important to building your family, and you bring that culture with you to work.
And we care about who you are outside of the workplace. And that's the really big message here.
That's our motto, right?
Yeah.
Literally in huge vinyl letters on our wall, Compliance Line cares.
That's right.
And so these are ways to promote that diversity in your population. But also, and then the last thing that we're going to talk about here is celebrating diversity.
Right.
So
I think that's really important.
You have no idea how many costumes are out in our office
We're costume
today.
contest today.
Yeah, it is costume. We got to choose our own winners, but everybody is allowed to celebrate who they are every single day. There's no rules against tattoos. There's no rules against blue hair.
Your hair can look however you want it to look. You can be sleeves of tattoos, like if that's what you're into. That's what you like. And we don't care how you look. We care about how you interact with our people, what kind of job you do.
Right. Are you empathetic in the workplace and in interacting with others? Yeah. Right.
And I mean, you could just express yourself in whatever way you want, as long as it's not offensive for the most part. Like you said, we have some crazy costumes.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah. We should put some of those on our Twitter.
Yeah, that would be fun.
That would
be
fun.
Take a big picture later.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we are. We're not missing that, are we? No, it's at 2:30. Okay.
Yeah.
So we celebrate holidays here, and not just the major ones. Like, we want people to celebrate whatever it is that you culturally celebrate. There's no, we don't allow this religion, so we don't allow all the other religions. Celebrate. You guys let me put up Krampus pictures on my door at Christmas time. So it's celebrate who you are, and take those cultural differences and put them out there. Celebrate them. Don't hide them.
Right.
Let your employees be the whole person that they are every single day when they walk out the door, and when they walk in the door, they're going to be happier.
Yes.
Your company is going to be more profitable.
Yes.
We actually have some statistics on that we can post out on our social media, but I think we're going to do a whole kind of episode.
Yeah, like stay tuned for that.
Yeah, stay tuned on the money side of things. I might skip out on vacation on the dollars and cents one. But introduce your employees to other cultures.
Yeah.
Yeah, let your religious individuals be religious. Let your people with the different sexual orientation have a different sexual orientation.
It just care about the work they do.
Yeah.
And how they act.
That's about
And that's it.
You just summed up like the last 45 minutes in that one sentence. So I'm glad that you did it now. Thanks.
Yeah. You're
Thanks, Kaylin.
welcome.
So yeah, but care about the work that they do, not what they look like.
Yeah. Or who they are as an individual. Care about how they act, how they treat people at work, how they treat customers, and what they do to perform for your company, and that's it.
Right. So in our upcoming shows, we're going to do shows on, I think we said like the generations in the workplace, how to interact with different generations, what's a priority to millennials versus what's a priority to baby boomers. We're going to talk about like religion, one of our Christmas shows, or closer to Christmas shows. We're going to get, it's going to be a very compliant Christmas around here, because we're going to talk about ethics and gift giving. We're going to talk about the diverse populations, religious holidays around that time of year.
Yeah, we're getting into gift giving season.
Yeah, we got a whole great lineup of shows coming up. We're really excited. We're going to have guests in here that are hopefully going to represent the populations that we're speaking about. So it's not just two Caucasian women sitting here talking about diversity.
But we'll probably be here too.
We will absolutely be. I wouldn't miss it. But let us know what your company does.
Yeah, I think the idea for this series is to share what we do with everyone. So hopefully if they find it will better, encourage diversity and inclusion in their workplace, they can adopt those practices. But we want to work as a partner with other organizations out there. Share your ideas with us. We'll share them on our podcast to share with other organizations.
Absolutely.
Like this should be a kind of a circle.
It's a conversation, not a lecture.
Yes.
Yeah, we want to hear what you do in your business. We're happy to share more of our ideas with you. We're happy to talk to you about any of the training or the policies that we have. I mean, I'm always happy to talk about training.
You could get her all day.
Don't put that bad juju on anybody. But we can talk about how our employees make up the whole of compliance line.
They're the heart.
Yeah, absolutely, because we care.
That's
Compliance line cares.
Compliance line
That's
cares.
what the vinyl sticker in the hallway says. So, all right. I think that's going to do it for today.
Yeah.
What else?
I think that wraps up our intro. Like we introduced.
Banged it out.
Yeah, that's right. My wing out. Introduced kind of what it is we're going to be talking about. Our next episodes will be a little more specific to different parts of diversity. But this is just the start of it.
Yeah, pretty awesome. So check us out on the Google, the Twitter, the Facebook, the Instagram a book. That's a one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the LinkedIn.
The LinkedIn. Check out us on those. Leave your comments, like and share.
Yeah.
We appreciate all of our listeners and our viewers, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Amanda Hosenfeld.
I'm Kaylin Gopka.
And stay compliant.
Happy Candy Day.
Happy Halloween.